So, hello everyone. I have this privilege to introduce you those two gentlemen, John and Wendell, who actually dedicated their lives in Agile to help our education systems to become better. And I'm super curious about this because my daughter is going to school this year in September, the first year. So I want to learn from you guys and maybe start helping our school to be more agile as well. So, John and Wendell.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much, Susie. My daughter's doing her first year of school this year as well. So I'm excited to see how this goes with her. So hi, everyone. I'm John Miller. I'm here with Wendell Boggs. Our session today is just on Agile in education. So what does that landscape look like? And I've done this couple of talks with Agilists. And what I find is the best thing for this is telling some stories, sharing the stories of teachers of how it actually impacts students. So that's pretty much what we're going to be doing, is sharing stories, sharing some videos, and sharing some photos. Wendell, do you want to do a quick introduction of yourself?
Sure. My name is Wendell Boggs. I'm an 18-year English teacher, high school English teacher here in the United States, in Texas and in Colorado. And I've been using Agile in the classroom for about 5 years now. It's been pretty incredible.
Yeah, we've known each other for a couple of years now, and I've been able to watch Wendell apply this in his classroom, and absolutely amazing. So towards the end of the session, I'm actually going to do an interview with Wendell as the Agile teacher. So that should be a lot of fun to get his insights and his experiences throughout this. I'm John Miller. I'm a certified Scrum trainer, certified enterprise coach, for those who know what that means. Been applying Agile in education since 2009, 2010. I think 2010 was our first classroom that we actually tried this in a fourth grade classroom. But let's get into it. So I have some slides here of Keynote, so I can't play it for some reason on this venue. So we're just gonna go through it. I want you to imagine, so my daughter is going to kindergarten next year. I think Susie's daughter is going to kindergarten, this school year coming up. And if I calculated this right this morning, I may not have, but imagine they graduate. They're graduated high school. They're out of 12th grade. They're going to college. They're off to a career, whatever 2033 looks like. So imagine it's 2033. And a kindergartner today is entering the world of college and career in that year. Just write in chat your answer to what does the world look like that they're entering? How is the world different than maybe it is today?
And you can use the chat, of course, to enter all of those suggestions.
I understand there's a delay, so I will have some awkward silences as I wait for the chats to come through, I hope.
And now you should be able to see. Do you want me to read it for you, or do you see it on your second monitor?
Yeah, I'm not seeing it yet.
Okay, so more dynamic, less task-oriented work, more creativity, more collaborative.
Yeah, absolutely.
More dynamic, more human, more team-oriented. Remote digital applications are the norm and not the exception.
Ooh, Roxy posted probably no classrooms. That's interesting, right? Maybe that's a whole different world of learning at that point. So it sounds like a lot of things that are happening today, but maybe even more so. It's kind of amplified. Is kind of what I'm getting from the chat responses. I have these 4 C's that I talk about a lot with education and just in corporate training, that the world is different. And I have these 4 C's. You'll see another 4 C's when it comes to education, but I have these 4 C's about the context of modern work or the modern world. And the world is just going to be more competitive. I think you'll see that with, you all know that, that's easy to have a startup totally disrupt, a big player nowadays with the tools and technology that we have. The rate of change is accelerating. It's compounding. The connectedness we have. I saw Bernadette, the networking with kids in school all over the world. I think you can do that now with this hyper connectedness. I think we're all experiencing it now with COVID. Even though most of us are working from home, we're still hyper connected using Zoom and hop-in tools and this kind of conference. And that's not going to decrease, I believe, in 2033. And the magic word we all know is Agilist is complexity. The world's just going to be increasingly complex, much more complex than it is today. And I like this other C from Alan, decolonize focus. I love that. That should be like a kind of another C up here as well. So a different world, at least a more amplified world, I think, in these four attributes that are there. Now, imagine again, 2033. You have this new world, this decolonized, more networking, much more competition, connected, complex, and lots of change that's happening, which is kind of happening today, especially with COVID. Now, imagine the kids are entering this world. They're no longer kids, by the way. What skills do they need? What skills do they need to thrive in that kind of world? And you could just type that into chat. Awkward silence again as I wait for chats to come in.
So there is a second question. What skills will these humans need to thrive in this world? And you can start typing. Communication, critical thinking, creativity, collaboration.
They got it. That's my next slide.
Empathy and desire for change.
Oof. Mm.
Adaptability, resilience, ability to cope with change. Now it's so fast. Focus, analyze data, make decisions. Information management, ability to curate their personal learning. Ability to communicate and network.
Thanks, Saurav. Saurav said Muta. I was in the wrong thing. I was in the
I thought so,
part.
yeah.
Okay. I was like, I shouldn't be backstage, so I should be on the stage. So I got you. I can see it now. All right.
Okay, good.
Wendell is an expert at this, but there's actually something called the 21st Century Skills, and these are the 4 C's, and there's a lot more skills unpacked here. But Wendell, do you want to talk on these a little bit? These 4 skills and why they're important? Oops, can't hear you, Wendell.
Sorry about that. Yeah, so they're foundational. The creativity and innovation is what makes an Agile classroom different. Students are not they're not just handed an assignment with directions and examples and then expected to complete it and turn it in. They're given ownership over their learning. The collaboration piece is huge too. Some students come in strong collaborators, some are not, but by the end, they have all increased their collaborative skills, which obviously is a hugely important skill in and out of the classroom. Critical thinking, problem solving, kind of like the creativity and innovation. When their learning is handed over to them, they build those critical thinking skills in ways that they wouldn't if they were just coasting, which is something you can't really do in an Agile classroom. You can't just coast. You really have to learn to think critically and problem solve. And the communication piece, like the collaboration piece, also vastly important. Students learn to communicate in ways that they wouldn't otherwise. They're having to communicate with people that maybe they wouldn't normally. They're learning those social skills and how to work with people. So.
Yeah, so you'll see this throughout education. They talk about 4 C's a lot, and you can unpack it more: flexibility, adaptability. I love the things that you all added as well. I think there's a lot more to it. So interestingly enough, you might have seen this, there's a World Economic Forum report, and that came out in January 2020, actually. And it talked about these emerging skills that you need in this new economy that's coming up. And interestingly enough, you'll see under these different categories. One of them is like this product development and agile software development. Hey, that's us, right? Us Agilists, right? We have some good prospects in the future here. And Agile Manifesto as a skill, which is kind of odd, but I kind of get what they're saying, right? So Agile keeps coming up. And they have this other part of product development of the jobs itself: product owner, agile coach, scrum master. These are the emerging jobs of tomorrow. So not only are these skills important, but I think bringing agile to education, this is something I show teachers a lot and educators, is that this isn't just a way of learning, like this is opportunity. Like this is a great opportunity for students to be able to graduate with these skills because there's an emerging future and demand for these skill sets. But let me give you a look at what an agile classroom kind of looks like. This is in 2010. This is the first classroom that we really tried this with, fourth grade in Phoenix, Arizona. Teacher, Kim Mills. She was a kindergarten teacher originally, and I did a kind of a training for a bunch of teachers. I was in the district at the time as an education technology director, and we were doing it in our department. We wanted to model 21st century skills, and that's why we brought in Scrum and Agile. And we came during one of our sprint plannings because it was something for her class or her area. And she was like, wow, this is what our classroom should look like. This is what our school should look like. What you're doing with Scrum and Agile here, like the way you guys are working, like that's the way our classroom should look. I was like, huh, interesting. Well, let's talk more. So it was never like a mission of mine to do this. It just got pulled into it by a teacher. So we started to partner. And so, well, what did this look like? And she was, well, I'm going to be teaching fourth grade next year, and I want to play with their independence. I couldn't really do that with kindergartners, but fourth grade, I feel like they're mature enough that I could actually use some of this and give them some structure, but allow them to be creative and empowered and have choice and et cetera. So this was back in 2010, it was like my iPhone at the time, and it's just a time-lapse video. So this is what it kind of looks like in action. Right now, looks like a traditional classroom. They're all in seats, but take a look. And this is sped up, so they're not on Red Bull or caffeine. It's just a time-lapse. You'll see in the back here, their boards at the time that we had created for them. They're working in teams, even though it's hard to see that. They're actually building a flying machine, I think, if I remember correctly. It's a science class, science period. So with this, they had different periods in elementary school, and they always had a different flavor of Agile for each period. So math looked a little bit different. It's probably more whole classroom instruction, but using visual boards and more participatory learning. This one's more of a project-based learning, so much more engaged, much more choice, much more collaboration. So looking at that crazy movement there in chat, just write in, describe in a few words, how would you describe that classroom? Fun. It was fun. Vital. Ooh, I love that, Merrick. Vital. Vitality. Yeah, some might think it looked chaotic. All right, there wasn't. There was actually a pattern happening. If you actually watch, you can see how it was like a flock of birds. There was a lot of self-organization happening there. Right. These are the kind of things that I think you described about what the future needs. These skills that we need these students to have in the future. Healthy. I love Merrick's descriptions. I'm going to steal all Merrick's descriptions. Healthy, vital. Here is old slide. I was trying to dig this up from before. From Kim Mills, this is something she said was, I wish I could have gotten her here too, but time-wise I couldn't. The walls have come down and the students feel safe and trusted to speak freely. Students treat each other as all equal. You can't tell who is a resource. Resource is like you might call it like a special education kid, and it was a mainstream classroom, so they had special ed, what they call resource education kids in that class with, you know, regular kids, part of my language. Sure, I'm using that incorrectly. ELL kids, speech, kids who have speech impediments or therapy. They also support and listen to one another. They build their group confidence up by encouraging team members. So this is just a little description of what she saw in her classroom from this. Oops, that's a duplicate. There's supposed to be another one there, but she has another cool quote as well, but about the students supporting each other. That a substitute teacher came in one day and she didn't give the substitute teacher a lesson plan. The substitute teacher said, what am I supposed to do? Because usually you give them a lesson plan. Just the kids will tell you what to do. That was the lesson plan. And the substitute teacher after, she was, I've never seen anything like that in my life. They brought out their boards. They went up there and started, they did like their daily, what you call daily stand up or daily scrum. And they started moving their, because I've never seen anything like it. I just sat back and watched the whole time. So it was a pretty easy day for her, besides probably being in shock from it. This is something in her that we started to spread in that school was professional learning communities. So if you see this, this is just this natural thing that just started to happen organically, is the teachers would get together, and these are like different benchmarks for students. And every student was a sticky note at this point. And the teacher teams would get together, speech therapist, EOL, fourth grade teacher, and say, how do we help this kid move from this level to the next level? And they'd have these strategies here for their user stories as a second grade team, when our strategic students to make benchmark. And they had some strategies of how to do that. So from really cool things that started to emerge in this fourth grade classroom. And you'll see this is the professional learning community, a bunch of teachers trying to help their students. This is Kristen Samari. She's one of my favorite people in the world. For those that know the story of Hope High School, we talked about this in one of the Scrum gatherings, if you were there. There was a school in Phoenix, Arizona that I had a prior relationship with, and there was a failing school. Kristen became principal, and they were about to shut the doors because it was just failing. You know, they had kids who were rejected from other schools, or who were kicked out, or were just off track from learning, that might have had kids and couldn't make it to school. So they were like the last refuge as a charter school, the last chance for these kids. And it was tough, right? Because these kids they're not highly performing because of their situation, a lot of their situation. So because of that, their test scores were terrible, and their charter was going to get revoked. So Kristen came in, I was there, and said, hey, do we want to try Agile here? Do we want to try, pretty much like, hey, well, we need to try something. We need to try something different. So this Hope High School, this is, we totally pivoted that school with the help of Agile, not only Agile, great teachers, great leadership, but Agile really helped change that culture around to where they were no longer dealing drugs in the bathroom, where the students cleaned it up themselves, just using Agile. So here's one where we did team t-shirts using Scrum. That's how we kind of taught them Scrum. As they designed a team t-shirt, like a class t-shirt. Here's some examples of students at Hope High School, you know, using this. But totally changed it around. I wish Kristen was here. She's a much better storyteller. Yeah, them doing their project here. But they do some really cool things at Hope High School where they actually have the students run the school. They actually have these clubs, kind of, they call it Student Culture Club, I think, but they run all the functions of the school, from school store to all the events that the school does. And it's all student driven. The school culture is driven by the students, not the teachers. Teachers are more coaches. They'll meet with students at that level. Absolutely amazing. If you're in Phoenix or can visit Kristen, go visit that school. This is Heather Carrero. She's in Ho Chi Minh City. I was able to go there and train some of their teachers on the Agile classroom model. And that was a lot of fun. She's awesome. She's just a visionary. So you'll see some students here doing a retrospective. You'll see some examples here of 6th, 8th, 9th, where they, I think, doing some kind of project. And then some teachers actually working on this together. Absolutely awesome. One story from here was a student locked himself in the bathroom. It sounds like a disaster story, but they locked themselves in the bathroom and wouldn't come out because they were kind of forced to be self-directed. They wanted to be told what to do. and they had a parent-teacher conference, and the father was coming in, and the teacher was like, "Oh my God, he's going to just lay into me." And he reached out, shook the teacher's hand, and said, "I just wanted to thank you. I've been trying to get my son to be more independent for years, and I haven't been able to. And it's the first time I've seen him be able to actually be more independent." So that's, I think, the promise of what this thing can actually do. Here's actually a recent picture she sent me. This is COVID times right now. This probably happened this week, of teachers planning. I can't remember where she's at now. She's an international teacher. She might be in India or Korea. I don't know where she is. She's always some other country. But they're planning on how to bring students back during this COVID time. And you'll see kind of their plan for teachers of what do we do? Make a checklist for COVID policies. So pretty cool, right? That it's being used in many ways to adapt to this environment that we have today. I'm going to show you a quick video, grand view. Unfortunately, I can't edit it, so I'm just going to move it over and play it for you. It's about 5 minutes, but they tell the story better than I do. And please chat if you hear the video. I am concerned that you're not going to hear it, so let me know if you can hear it as it plays.
When you're trying to personalize with students, is that their pace and their rate of change happens so quickly, and to be able to tap into their productivity when they want to learn something, they want to accomplish something. When you're providing choice, you have to also provide tools for success. And this entire visible thinking model and design model and productivity model is perfect for that. And we're so thrilled to be able to see what's happening in the world and apply that in an educational setting, because that will not only make the kids successful at school, it will make them successful in college and beyond. The most important thing for me as a parent, as a mother of 2 children that come to the school, is that they're learning how to be a well-rounded student, a well-rounded child, not just learning how to take tests and to regurgitate information, but really how to think for themselves and how to be active problem solvers and how to collaborate and learn how to learn. And that's probably the biggest reason that I'm here at this school as a parent.
I think that the Agile movement is very important in schools today, because everything that teachers and educators are studying and learning is showing that students that go out into the workforce need to be very differently prepared than students in the past. So this tool lets them be able to clearly define goals, to be able to work together, to be able to communicate effectively, and to be able to track their progress and know when they've succeeded in the end.
There are a lot of people that work very individually on things, and a lot of my classmates are like, all right, I have to get this done. I have to do this right now. And there's not a big focus on teamwork. And I'm starting to see a shift more towards teamwork. We're doing a lot more group projects, project-based learning and stuff like that, which you really need teamwork for. So I'm glad to see the school sort of shifting in that direction from the old sort of read and regurgitate style of learning.
The most proud is definitely when students have the realization that the work that they have accomplished is for them, and it's beyond school, it's beyond a grade. They've discovered something that they truly care about and they're engaged in, and almost always it carries on beyond the walls of the school community.
I'm hoping that success will look like us being at meetings and standing around and actually moving things to the done column and seeing how we came up with something and it finished and we had an end product. It'll look in the classrooms, our students will be completing projects in a smoother transition. There won't be any more, well, whose job was that? And why didn't this get done? And what was the time frame? We didn't have enough time. So success will be in the visible of, we did it.
Whether you're a student who struggles with school or you're a student who loves school, you have to grow in the areas where you need the most support. And I think that being able to have choice, being able to always have to be aware of my productivity and not necessarily rest on my, I can answer that question, or I could do that. I have to put real things in motion. And I think that this is an excellent cross-check for anybody willing to grow and wanting to be more than what they originally think they're good at.
All right, where am I here? There we go. Cool. So just in chat, just write your thoughts and feelings that came up for you as you watched that Grand View video. What thoughts and feelings came up for you as you watched it? That's right, Rick. We will all be out of jobs, and this is the way it should be. I call it Generation Agile. So having, Generation X, whatever, this is Generation Agile. I hope that we can unleash. There will be no need for Agile transformations, I hope, as the wave of Generation Agile hits the corporate world. So this one, you can keep bringing them in, but this is Rosita Darden. She's actually was at Grandview Prep, a teacher there. And you'll see some of her third graders here in this picture. And last minute, I already had this scheduled with her, a Zoom call, because we haven't talked in a couple years. And I was like, you know what? Can I record this call? Because I have a talk tomorrow, and maybe there's some cool things we can plug. And it was great. Like, it just felt so good. It felt so good to talk with her. So here's Rosita. I tried to edit it. I just couldn't. I'm not a video editor. So I'll just skip around the video a little bit of what we had. So here's Rosita. And I'll pause and then skip to the next section so you don't hear me talking and looking silly on Zoom. So my question to her was, what was the impact on your students with Agile?
To try this out with. But what I found is that everything that they had already been doing just went to a whole other level. Like, if they were doing things at 80%, it definitely went to 100%. There was more excitement and more ownership and more collaboration. Even though we had it, there was just more. And whenever they had an issue, like maybe, one didn't like what the other was trying to design or where they were going, they went back to the Agile board and they went back to, well, what were the goals that we had and how are we holding each other accountable? And they had these like really mature discussions. And I remember recording and sharing that with you at the time because I'm like, wow, they're like 8 years old. They're doing this.
They're at least better than adults.
They weren't fighting about it. They were just being mature. Like, hey, that kind of hurt my feelings. And I like this idea. Can you listen to me?
Wow. Well, I feel like as adults could just go and watch that class and just.
All right. Don't want to hear me talk. Let me skip over to, I think the right time is about here. I do ask another question.
Possible.
Definitely having the structure for me.
So ask her, what made that possible? So she said it about from 80% to 100%. What made that possible?
Obviously having been trained, because if you had handed me like a manual, I would be able to do it, but I'm sure that I would not be able to do it correctly. So having had that training and the modeling and Aldi coming in, and showing us, that definitely helps a lot. And then having the resources for me to go back and look through the resources and then maybe read a little bit about it or watch a video or something, that definitely was helpful. And then having a good mindset. So I had a good mindset. I'm not afraid of change and I'm not afraid of trying anything new. So I think that definitely helped, and not to be conceited, but I think that's important. So I did have a good mindset going into it. And obviously as a teacher, to some extent, I'm the leader. I do believe in a kid-friendly classroom where the kids are the ones that are leading. But I think as an adult, the facilitator, that was important that I had a good mindset and that I was like, good whole lot is then the kids took that excitement as well.
Absolutely. My experience with.
And one more part, again, did not edit this, so could not. One more thing, which I thought was really cool.
to then teach them again in 6th grade, but it didn't necessarily stop in 3rd because I was very passionate about it. And if
try that again. Should be a little bit sooner, maybe.
So it's funny you say that because we actually did continue. So that class, I was able to then teach them again in 6th grade, but it didn't necessarily stop in 3rd because I was very passionate about it. And if we brought in a new teacher, which we did, a 4th grade teacher, I kind of showed her a little bit about what it was. We had some more trainings for those new teachers, and we were able to maintain that. So my 3rd graders at that time moved up to 4th, and they were able to still use it. And then in 5th grade a little bit, and then they came to me in 6th grade. And
full circle, came full circle right back to you. Wow.
And I was co-teaching with another teacher at Grandview who had also been using Agile on and off a little bit depending on the project, but because we became project teachers together, she did what she was really passionate about, and I was like, look, this works. I'm telling you, we can definitely use it for projects. So that's what we did. So it was wonderful to see them from 3rd grade to 6th grade and see how they organize themselves. The kids that had us, obviously there were a lot of new children in the class in 6th grade last year, but we were able to kind of wind them in and teach them, and the other kids immediately helped them out as well. So it was really nice to see how it helped them just be better students, be more accountable for their actions, and be responsible and be very goal oriented. That was the other thing. We always had goals. And for project class, we did a couple of competitions. And I mean, I'm a little competitive, we wanted to win, but that wasn't the main thing. It was all about producing this amazing product. It was an art piece, or it was an engineering piece. It was all so many different things. And the Agile boards definitely helped us. And in the end, we wound up getting a couple of winners. And
all right, let me skip over here. Pretty cool. Let's see if this is right.
Going back to my 3rd graders,
So I asked her highlight experience of Agile in the classroom, Agile classrooms. What was her favorite moments?
Just being in awe that these little people, could have these very mature discussions about why this isn't going to work and why this goal maybe should be changed or the task should be changed. And we're not done yet. So we need to move our little stickies back. That I was proud. Because initially, even though they were a great bunch of kids, there's always that arguing and the tattletaling, and I had a tattle jar, and I found that my tattle jar wasn't as full anymore. So I think that's when I knew, I'm like, okay, this is definitely.
What a great metric.
Yes.
the tattle jar. How full is it? Is it lower?
All right. So that's Rosita. She's awesome. Starting a new school this year, and she's looking at bringing this in to her new school as well. So Agile education. I have a model called Agile Classroom. Some of you may have heard EduScrum, which is very popular in Europe, which is awesome. But watching the teachers realize very soon that it can't just be Agile as we do it in the corporate world. It can't just be Scrum, port it over and say, hey, you just go do the Scrum thing. It's different. You don't have full-time team members working together. You have them rotating classes. So it's got to be different. The terms are artificial to them. So we got to make it authentic to education. And by us actually applying it, I was able to watch patterns emerge. Oh, this is kind of how they're using it. And kind of put something together to kind of a pattern, almost like a pattern language of how you might apply this based on their context, based on different schools. So many different schools, from Hope High School, which was a at-risk population, not much money, to Lausanne American School, who's lots of money, very rich, parents send them to this boarding school, but very different things. But how can they use these principles and practices that fits their context? And what we found is more of a cross-pollination. It's something new, where you bring these Agile principles and practices in, but it meets the education context and need, and their practices too, to kind of make something new. It isn't just doing Scrum in the classroom. And I really think it's something different at this point. There's something we create. I'm not going to go through this in detail. It's something we can send you a link to. Instead of doing like an Agile manifesto, I did not want to do we believe in this over that. I don't want this to be a copy of Agile. I want it to be inspired and a cross-pollination of it. So we came up with something called a bunch of other educators that were doing Agile something called the Agile in Education Compass, which I'm not going to go through, but Stuart Young, if you know him, he drew this up for us. But because it is unique, you get emerging practices, things that are different that maybe aren't the same in our world. You have some things that are same, some things that are different. And so I love this. This is from Paul Magnuson. He's in Switzerland, Lausanne American School in Switzerland. I've been there 2 or 3 times to help them. They're doing amazing stuff. I consider him one of the thought leaders in all this. But he has this one practice, which I love. And let Paul describe that.
Hi, everybody. One of my favorite stories about students being agile, I'm at Lausanne American School in Switzerland, is a process we set up a couple of years ago that we called Teacherless Observations. We got into it by chance, but the general idea was that I would come for an observation of class. The only requirement was that the teacher wasn't there. Since our goal was to get students in charge of themselves and doing their own class, it seemed like a pretty fair way to observe. I remember going to a physical ed course where they were learning badminton. They shared videos. They had leaders for different parts of the class. They used a Kanban board to organize what they were going to work on. They did a tournament at the end, extended it a little bit because they still had time, and that was it. I remember leaving the gym that morning, and I ran into the teacher coming in, and she said, "How was class?" I said, "It was great." And then we debriefed it, of course, later. Thanks, John. Thanks, everybody. You're with a great trainer. Have a good time.
I paid him to say that part. How cool is that? Teacherless observations, like to observe for anyone who's education, teacher observations are a big part of it, and they watch the teacher teach and the engagement level and all that. In this case, it was like, hey, there should be no teacher. What does that look like? I think pretty cool. You don't have to type it in the chat. I think pretty cool. Wendell, you ready? I'm going to ask you some questions.
All right.
So thinking about Agile classrooms and Agile in education from your experience. So tell me a little bit, how did you get started with that?
So I, after probably 13, 14 years in education, it really hit me that the way we had been doing it just wasn't working. Wasn't working for me, it wasn't working for the students. And so, I was faced with the decision to either find a new way or do something else, because it just wasn't rewarding, again, for me or for the students. And so through my wonderful wife, I discovered Scrum and realized that, wow, this really does have an application. And so I spent a couple of weeks, couple of months reading everything I could, anything on the internet that I could find. EduScrum was very helpful. And then I discovered Agile Classrooms, John's Agile Classrooms. I digested that as well. And I was so excited the next school year in August to change things up. And as scary as it was, and it was frightening, trying to thinking about instituting such change was frightening, but boy, the results just came back so positively, so quickly, that it was really exciting to keep going. So yeah, just seeing the student empowerment. I use that word over and over. Students are empowered, and when the students are empowered, they exceed your expectations every time.
And what was it with Agile in education, Agile classrooms that actually helped with the student learning experience?
Yeah, so back to that ownership of learning. There are a number of pieces that allowed for that to happen. Beginning with what I think is the most important thing to start with, is that values agreement, the learning agreement. That the student teams come up with on their own, and they hold themselves to it. It's a great way to get those foundational values, well, again, as the foundation, and then being able to lean back on those, lean back into those through the planning, excuse me, through the planning, choice and visibility are huge. Again, the students are able to make choices in their own learning, so they're taking that ownership. It's visible for me, for administrators, for them, for their teammates. The check-ins, the stand-ups I found were huge as well, because it didn't take students long to figure out how to do it and realize that they could get themselves started. They could clear up any impediments, any obstacles, impediments that they had right there at the beginning of class. So that, again, helps them to take ownership. The review process really ensures goal mastery, because they're not just turning in an assignment and then forgetting about it. And then that reflection piece is so fun to watch, so amazing, so inspiring, because the teams and the individuals grow so significantly through making plans for improvement going forward, learning how to really give and receive feedback. It's I mean, all of those things, and that's certainly not an exhaustive list, but those things together just really help kids to take ownership.
Awesome. And what was your proudest moment with Agile and your students?
Yeah, so I tell this story all the time, but I don't get tired of it. So it was end of the year, first year that we had used Scrum in the classroom. And one girl, Caitlin, comes up to me, and this was not a girl who was known for sugarcoating or even being nice to me. And she came up and she gave me a huge compliment. She said, "Mr. Boggs, we didn't really want to do this at the beginning. We just wanted to be told what it is that we were supposed to do, and then do it, and then move on." And that was a thing that I heard from her pretty frequently throughout the year. But here on this last day of school, she said, I'm really glad that we did this, and I'm glad that we learned how to collaborate. We learned how to work together. We learned to work through problems as opposed to running away from them or moving away from them. Because a lot of students wanted to be moved to another team, because for this reason or that reason. And I was very insistent that we learned to work through things. Anyway, so she says at the end of the year, she's really glad that they were in that team, because they learned to work together. They learned skills they wouldn't have learned otherwise. And she said that they were like a family, a dysfunctional family, in her words, but a family nonetheless. They still fought.
Aren't all families dysfunctional?
Exactly. And that was my response to her. But yeah, so she learned that she and her team learned that sometimes you're going to struggle, sometimes you're not going to get along, but you can work through it, and you can still be an effective team. So that's the one that always comes to mind when people ask my favorite moment.
And how do you think your students are better prepared for future of learning and work and life?
Yeah, they have communication and collaboration skills that they would not have otherwise. In the years that I taught before this awakening of mine, the students just never learned that stuff. There wasn't a place for it in the classroom. Ultimately, the teacher was imparting the knowledge, and the students were completing the assignments or not. And no matter what kind of rosy facade we tried to put on it, we never really changed anything. But this changes it.
And what was their scariest moment where you're like, oh, maybe, did you ever have any moments where like, what did I get myself into? Or
yeah, absolutely. So, it's organized chaos. You walk in and some students are working independently, some students are working collaboratively. But I know that the learning is visible. I know that they have their learning canvases, their Kanban boards up, and they're keeping up with it. So I know it's not chaos, or at least I know that it's organized. But when that administrator would walk in, the one who tends to be kind of a taskmaster, when that happens, it's a little frightening. You're like, oh God, I hope he gets it. They get it. But I tell you, anytime I've had that fear, it's always been assuaged because the administrator sees what's going on and they're excited about it. Every single time they're excited.
Yeah, I remember an administrator coming in, visiting one of our classrooms in 2010, and what she said was, it was from another school actually, and she said, wow, this is what all the books tells us we should do, but never tells us how to do it.
Yep.
And this is the how. This is actually how you make this happen. Her eyes were just like lit up of like, and it's structure, but still gives them choice and all that. I do remember my one scary moment, by the way, just triggered was, I remember going to that fourth grade, very first classroom as a group of boys sitting around a poster board, which we made their scrum board, their Kanban board. And they were just sitting there doing nothing the whole class period, absolutely nothing. And I was like, I ruined their education. I was like, we got to pull the plug. This is, all the kids were doing stuff. This one group was doing nothing. But we had a teacher like you who really, I think, really believed in the students. And by the end of the year, probably the most self-organized group I've ever seen, adults or kids. Any advice for the Agilists out there that might want to help with this?
Yeah, just talk about it. Talk to your kids' teachers about this. Give them resources. Give them the Agile Classrooms website. There's great stuff on there. The blogs were inspiring to me, still are. EduScrum, there's stuff out there. I'm certainly open to talking to anybody who wants to message me. I'll give advice. I'll give my ideas. So yeah, just be there to to support those teachers, because it's tough. It's tough, and it's scary to think about such a large structural change.
Awesome. Well, it's inspiring to know you and see what you've done with your students. Saurabh, I'm sorry, and I forgot. Does it end at 12:50 or chat time, right? 10 more minutes, correct? Or Zoom?
It's ended at 50, so you have 3 more minutes.
Okay. Well, did any questions come in for Wendell? I didn't see any.
I think you answered most of them already, so I haven't seen anything unanswered. But I have one, if you don't mind, and that's more like, did you try to talk to the Minister of Education or some governmental layer for education to make it more process oriented? Any of you actually?
I mean, I haven't. I'm working at the grassroots level, but there certainly is. There are entities. There is at least one entity that I know of here. John, do you remember the name? The group that went to Seattle.
Wasn't Teach for America. I can't remember. No. I can't remember, but some organization.
Yeah. There is a nonprofit group that is working to reach legislators here, to really espouse the importance, the efficacy of Agile practices in the classroom.
So I think someone asked a question about grade level. So far, third grade has been fourth grade's been the sweet spot for lots of, I won't go into the reasons, but I think that's the sweet spot to start. I've seen people use something like it with kindergarten, but it's more, obviously the level of choice is a little bit lower and things, but third, fourth grade, I find it's a really perfect time to start it. I do want to mention really quick before I look at these other ones, but we have a work group from Scrum Alliance. Wendell's part of that, myself, and all these awesome folks. They're actually applying Agile in education, of coming up with something for Agile in education. Some kind of learning objectives that we can share that's authentic to education. So we're really excited by the work that we're doing. Third grade, so 7, 8 years old. 7, 8, 9. That range is a perfect time to get started.
All right. Now I have my last question. So what is the one thing each of you would recommend to parents who would like to change or influence a little bit the school?
Yeah, so here's my advice here. I'll put it right there. As parents or Agilists, whatever, I find it's great, talking to the board and things great. You're not going to get lots of, you might get lucky, but it's a big boulder to push. So I say start where it's less risky to get things in, especially if you don't have an education background. Start with non-core curriculum, things that they have some freedom to innovate with. That it's oh my God, they can't fail math because we get tested on math. from the States or from whatever. After school programs like Lego robotics, those kind of things. Help the staff first, I find. I actually held off on that because I really wanted to help the classroom. But if you help staff operate better as staff, how do we operate better as a team to make the school better, to run our operations, to do projects or whatever? It builds their confidence up first before they even start it in the classroom. And usually it naturally happens that way anyway. Like, hey, why don't I try this in my classroom? So I think those three things are good things to start with. Wendell?
I think that maybe in instilling some of those minds or the mindset, the values in your own kids, and letting that show in the classroom. Teachers are going to be really impressed when a kid can handle their own learning, and they're going to have questions. Where did you learn this? And you'll be there to answer.
I love it. That's cool. So thank you very much. I'll definitely try to start with my kid then.